Welcome to the Let's Talk About It podcast with your host, Denise. Denise can be found on iamdenise.com and all social media platforms. On Let's Talk About It, we dive into the path along the journey while celebrating the human spirit, resilience, and ability to grow beyond limitations. Are you ready? Okay, then let's talk about it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Denise, and I have a special guest with me today, the author of Beyond Life's Moments. I hold it up so you can see it's now available on Amazon. And I'm with Nicole Spindler today, who wrote this incredible book about overcoming obstacles and adversities. And so we're just going to have a conversation about that today. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
It's a pleasure. Full disclosure, I went to get my hair done, which I don't know how long it takes for you to get your hair done, but pretty much it's like a whole day affair. So I was like, okay, I'm taking this book with me. And I'm so glad that I did, because there's so many touching stories in here about people who really just had unimaginable experiences that you would not even be able to think about how you would, even start the process of getting through. And they really shared their paradigm shifting perspective on how they were able to get through some of these experiences. But before we talk about some of the stories in the book, let's talk a little bit about you. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Nicole Spindler, and I only just recently graduated from college about 2 years ago already, which is hard to believe. It's only been 2 years, but I graduated from John Carroll University, which is in Cleveland, and I graduated in 2019 with double major in human resources and management. And currently I work in Pittsburgh, PA, and I work in kind of like talent acquisition, human resources for a large bank. And that's definitely my professional passion. I love HR, but a lot of people, in my free time, on the weekends, at night, I transform and devote my time to my writing passion, being able to tell stories, being able to kind of take my experiences and have a conversation through my writing. That's just something that I've always had a passion for, and always had this side dream of, I want to be a writer one day. I want to be able to have multiple passions and pursue them. And the fact that I'm not even, I'm only 2 years post-grad, not even 25 years old, and I can have the privilege to say I'm pursuing both my passions. It's hard to believe. I pinch myself sometimes thinking that, but yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Do you think your drive and your zest and your determination to kind of, accomplish these goals that you have set out has to do with the experiences that, has proven time and time again how fragile life is? Does that give you a new zest on life, and so it makes you more motivated in terms of, accomplishing the goals that you have set for yourself?
Absolutely, 100%. I think when you're kind of in those vulnerable positions in life, those fragile moments where, it's as if time is at a standstill, everything's frozen, and it's just like, everything hits you all at once. Your immediate thoughts, reactions, it's like kind of that pivotal moment where, you kind of see everything. You see how far you look at your past, you look at where you're at, and you see like just this open abyss that's just like your future that you haven't yet explored. And I 100% agree that any moment that I've had, and even talking obviously, about of the people who I interviewed in my book, we all kind of had that moment where it was like, I'm going to take this weak spot in my life, I'm going to take this challenge and really kind of see it as a catalyst, or see it as that's the spark that I need to kind of, I needed to kind of go through this to kind of open that door for me to pursue their passions or to just, to get through to the next moment. So yeah, I definitely agree. It can have that effect on you. It can have that effect on a lot of people.
I want to share something with you from your book. It says, "Who would have thought that my injury was the best thing that ever happened to me? If this never happened to me, I would never be where I am today. I felt like I was given this gift that I had to work through, to push the boundaries of what is possible and to find my best self on the other side." And, it's very hard for someone to think in the midst of tragedy that something devastating is happening. As Wayne Dyer frequently said, it's happening for me, not to me, right? And I felt like this capsulated that so well. Talk to us a little bit about your experience and what happened to you and what you had to really change the way in which you looked at what you were going through in order to get through it. So tell us a little bit about what happened with your parents.
Yes. So the real big initial, I think, life challenging moment that I talk about in my book is when I was about 15. So this was in 2012. I had 15 years of my life that I thought were absolutely perfect. Nothing happened to my family. Didn't have any deaths in the family. Everything was fine until one day I found out that my dad was diagnosed with an extremely rare cancer. And it was so rare that there's only been, I think at that time, only 10 other people who have had this cancer, and none have really survived from it. And there was really also at the time, and still today, there's really only one doctor that was kind of willing to walk with us into the unknown, was willing to perform this surgery that was kind of like a impromptu kind of situation. And they happened to be, of all places, in my hometown of Pittsburgh. They were working at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. And in that moment, because I was 15 at the time, and I only had one older sibling who was away in college. So it was just me and my parents. And I, in that moment, I felt like I could cry. I felt like I could scream at the world. There were so many reactions I could have done. But instead, I turned to my dad, who was so poised, who was so calm in the moment, and was willing to go through this, and seeing him being so determined and seeing his tranquility through all of that. The only thought that I had is, I have to see this through with him. I have to kind of stay positive for him. I have to kind of walk with him into the unknown. And realize that, I kind of realized at that age that time out, why is this happening to me? You know what I mean? There has to be a reason, why we are being challenged with this. So I kind of did, not only decide to walk alongside my dad through this and kind of view a more positive lens on the experience, but I wanted to find out how this experience would really shape myself and my family. And it's been an ongoing journey for 10 years now, especially just because, my dad's, cancer is there's still not much research on it. He's kind of like a pioneer, to be honest. I mean, he's kind of like the experiment, so to speak. We're we'll test out this surgery, or we'll test out this process and see if it works. And, he's doing great. He's doing amazing, to this very day. But in the last 10 years, going through this whole process, I mean, I've been able to explicitly say how, it taught me going through this experience has taught me so much about myself, and has led to a plethora of opportunities and effects, such as it to give a few examples, it really has strengthened my family's relationships even stronger than we had before. I think this experience led me to be able to write and tell my story and pursue my passion for writing. I think it also indirectly led me to my University of John Carroll, which I attended after high school. It's definitely I think that's the one thing that I think through my experience as well as others that I've shared. That's the one thing that's been consistent across our stories is by just kind of taking a moment and not succumbing to negativity and kind of viewing it in a transformative way rather than traumatic. That was the game changer and the key to unlock the life lessons that you learn through your experiences, as well as also, recognizing that you have the ability to get through these challenging chapters in your life.
I think that's really interesting because getting to a point where that's an automatic process, where someone can really just shift their perspective to kind of view things and look at things a little differently, or just automatically put your mind in the space of this is not happening to me, this is happening for me. In theory, it sounds simple, but like and many of the people that you interview in your book, I'm sure at some point there is a transition, because there's a very instinctive response for someone when they hear something tragic to feel afraid or to think about the worst possible outcome, or to think about that person not being there, or in some cases where the person actually, wasn't there. And so there is a space in which those initial responses are there, and you have to feel them and experience them, identify what they are, and then I think kind of transition in, what am I going to do with this, right? So this is happening, so what do I do? But before that mind shift, before you got to that space, and for your book, you've interviewed a lot of people who's had things happen to them, who's had tragedies, who's had to overcome like obstacles. And the commonality is the shift in perspective. But prior to that shift in perspective, what are some of the experiences that people shared with you about the actual part before that, about the fear, about the anxiety, and what were some of those experiences that they shared with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was about 2 or 3 things that were very consistent, not just with even what I experienced, but also what my interviewees, or heroes I call them in my book, experiences. One, they actually kind of recognized and caught themselves going down this rabbit hole of negativity. They recognized, and I've read, I've done research on this, and but we kind of have hardwired our brains to kind of automatically think negatively. We've kind of we automatically seem to gravitate towards, we see more negative news rather than positive news. We react more, our bodies physically, I think, react more when we experience negative things or things that are very anxiety inducing or stress related. But I recognized consistently, I think a lot of people caught themselves saying, hey, like, wait a minute, like, why am I automatically going down this rabbit hole? Like, I don't need to go down this rabbit hole. That's one thing that was very consistent. And another thing too was a lot of people were, especially those with inflicted, traumatic events, like whether they had like open heart surgery or any type of injury, they kind of felt like victim, like kind of like they were the victim. Like they were kind of saying like, poor me, like, why is this happening to me? They kind of were blaming themselves and kind of really like not really promoting self-love for themselves. And, they were kind of saying that this was all their fault, that, because I had cancer, even though I didn't smoke and didn't do anything, like I got cancer, like what, like I must have done something wrong, like they automatically assume that they are at fault when
guilt and self-blaming automatically seem to be the default that people go to a lot of times when things that we consider to be not normal, when those things happen, the first thing people are going to think is, what did I do to deserve this, right? Or is this karma? Is this, was I not good enough? Or is there something I did that I should not have done? And I think that's a very natural response for a lot of people to have. And unfortunately, like you mentioned earlier, a part of that is the rewiring of our brains, because I kind of look at it as not necessarily automatically pull into negativity, but really your brain trying to risk mitigate and prepare you for a worst case scenario and come up with a solution for that worst case scenario should that occur. Because, or as research tells us, our brains are basically designed to have us feel the least amount of pain as possible. So it has to calculate what the worst case scenario is. And unfortunately, we're not excluded from that conversation when it's calculating those scenarios.
Exactly. Yes. And yeah, and I think looking back even on my experience, I mean, I definitely felt those same experiences is where, I did catch myself going down that rabbit hole. And I even questioned like the kind of guilt kind of set into me a little bit, more in the sense of like thinking like, well, look at my dad. Like my dad was the type where he found out on his birthday when he got diagnosed, and he just turned 50. So it was like, I mean, for a 50-year-old who runs 7 miles a day, has never smoked, never drank, like the healthiest person I ever known, how the heck did he develop this rare cancer? Like, I mean, like you just kind of like look at him, it's like, the fact that it can happen to anyone, like you can, everybody in life at some point is going to experience some sort of challenge. I think that's kind of the marvelous mystery and beautiful thing about life is like, you need to be challenged. That's how you grow in life. That's how you kind of, continue moving forward on your journey. And I think I definitely like felt more the guilt of like, just couldn't believe that like my dad, like of all people, like, why would he, and that's when I started to feel kind of nervous too, of like, well, what would happen if because we had no idea if my dad was going to live the next day, next month or year. We didn't know. Even if things would be a success, we just didn't know. So I was like nervous of like, would he ever see me play like another lacrosse game? Would he see me go off to college or even walk me down the aisle? Like, I mean, I was even going that futuristic. That was the other thing. I was going very futuristic of like, oh my gosh, like what if? Yeah.
It's the rabbit hole that you talked about. And a way that you kind of conceptualize that is you say, I believe an unexpected derailment in life can be conceptualized as a revolving door of infinite possibilities that can have positive implications, not just in your defining moment, but throughout your life's journey, right?
Yeah.
And what a way to conceptualize that. We are talking to Nicole Spindler, author of the book Beyond Life's Moment. We're going to take a break and we're going to come right back. You're listening to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Denise. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Denise, and I have a special guest with me today, author of Beyond Life's Moment, Nicole Spindler. And we are talking today about ways to avoid going down the rabbit hole when tragedy strikes. Again, I'll share something with you from her book. We have a strong, unyielding tendency to spiral down the never-ending vortex of victimization and negativity. Amid life's unsettling situations, people struggle to develop an understanding of how something could have happened, why they were singled out to be a victim. And we were talking about that before the break, about that instant kind of thought about why me? I'm a victim of whatever this thing is. But when you look at the landscape of life itself, these things are actually more normal than they are abnormal. And I think why a lot of people experience them as abnormal is because we always think it could happen, but to somebody else, right? It could happen to somebody else. And so when it happens to us, that becomes the abnormality, that in fact it is happening to us, right? Because when we hear about somebody else having that experience, we feel empathy, but we understand that these things happen, right? And so for you, did you find yourself, and by talking to several people that you interviewed for your book, Did you find that kind of disconnect with the awareness that some of these things happen in life, but when it, as it pertains to it happening to individuals, how did they separate those two realities?
Yeah, I think one of the ways that I think myself included and my heroes in my book really kind of separated it is, I think, to your point, I think we get caught up in, I think, just looking so narrowly into our own lives. And I talk about this in my book, but one of the big lessons that, that I think we all, like all my heroes, learn when going through a traumatic experience is you really do have to kind of step outside your world, step outside yourself and gain a broader perspective, because you do realize that, you are not the only one experiencing challenges. There's maybe a lot of people going through just the same or worse than you. And I think for me, especially, I felt that way growing up in a very protected community, which again was great for me growing up. And I'm very thankful for the community I grew up in, but it was like a bubble. And the whole rest of the world reality was a whole different thing. And going through my dad's cancer and kind of experiencing that, I was able to like burst the bubble and get out of that and gain this immense perspective on how, my challenge with my dad's cancer, although yes, it was a very rare cancer. And specifically, I didn't know anyone that ever went through that. So stepping out of like the bubble community that I lived in, and being able to kind of, open my eyes and ears to kind of learning and meeting individuals who've gone through similar yet very distinct challenges, I think really kind of gave myself and my family this reassurance and even just confidence that we can get through this. And I think that was just, to be honest, a really eye-opening experience for me, as well as also for the heroes in my book too.
And I think that's really ultimately the biggest thing that people struggle with is the fear that I will not be able to get through this, that I will not survive this, that this is so hard, this is so heavy, this is so much that I will break. And I think once people are able to start to recognize or change their perspective that this too will pass and it's going to be hard or it's going to be tough, it's going to be difficult. But like I love to say, the empirical evidence supports that because of everything you've been through before and you're still here, this is another, another hill, another mountain that you're climbing. And perhaps when you get to the top, it'll be the bottom of another mountain, but nevertheless, it's one that you have to climb. One of the things I love that you say is obstructions and barriers can only do two things: stop us in our tracks or force us to get creative, become innovative, learn and grow from the experiences, and turn things around for the better. What a paradigm shift to have, to say, I have to use this moment of pain, of tragedy, and then try to create, try to be, like innovative. And so many stories I know, comes from, well, this happened, and while I was going through this, the birth of something else kind of came through. What do you think, in whether from your experience or any other people that you interviewed, what are some of the things that birth, just kind of from the tragedies that happened in some of these stories that you were able to share with people and learn from people?
Yeah, I think a couple really bold examples that I have of people kind of getting creative and innovative with their challenges is I've had one individual who had open heart surgery, and she really turned to her faith to kind of reconnect with the idea that she kind of needed to go through that experience so she could grow as an individual and be a little bit more closer to her authentic self. And now she, as a full-time job, works in kind of the faith-based community, serving it on a kind of more professional level. I myself, have, how I kind of got through my challenge, obviously, is I wrote a lot. And a lot of it obviously was in private journals. I didn't share much with people, but being able to write it down, it was kind of just like I could feel the burden automatically being released from me. And the pressure wasn't in my chest anymore or on my shoulders. It just kind of was all onto the page. And obviously it lends itself to kind of the creation of my book. So I think when people, when I refer to kind of this idea of being creative and innovative, it doesn't refer to more or less like, oh, we have to create this whole new surgery, this whole new like innovative process to like, making like this illness completely disappear. It's more of like, what can we be doing through these moments
channeling the energy, like channeling or redirecting some of that energy.
Correct. Yeah. Like how can we focus on kind of what activity or what could we be doing that's not only positive, but it's intrinsically going to help us get through this moment and beyond. And it's something, and it can be even kind of related to a form of self-care, or it can even just be related to a passion or a purpose or a profession that you want to do. It's anything that you kind of feel like can get you one step closer to healing, one step closer to kind of embodying this like continuous growth mindset.
How do you differentiate that from avoidance? Because I think a lot of times it's instinctive when people start to feel that pain or that anxiety to try to find something else to distract themselves, right? And sometimes distracting yourself seems like a good idea, but ultimately you're not dealing with the emotions that's there. And so, it can end up being symptomatic of something else. So how did you differentiate channeling your energy and innovation or turning it into something creative, as opposed to just suppressing or bypassing or not really wanting to feel what you were feeling?
Yeah, I think I can definitely speak for myself, especially, and also for several individuals that I interviewed, but it actually was very impossible to avoid. Just because, at least for me, I lived at home. It was, the minute I got home, I was just inundated with it. And although I went to school, my dad was always on my mind. If you were dealing with a personal inflicted illness, you're carrying that with you every second of every day. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to, and it's definitely something that, like you wish you could just like close the doors and not have to deal with it. But I think the key difference is the activities that you do. I think the difference between like proactively kind of, dealing with it versus avoiding is the activities that you're doing, or how you're kind of perceiving it need to be heading towards, instead of burying it deeper down the valley, they need to be healing. They need to be restoring yourself to a whole newer, more authentic you. It needs to kind of get you kind of allows you to grow as an individual too. Because if you're just kind of like doing, if you're just not doing anything productive or meaningful to kind of get you kind of, back on track or kind of reroute your course, you're kind of going to feel like you're stuck. You're going to feel like, or even confused or don't know which way to go. And I think that's where I found, a lot of my heroes, they really found activities or ways to express themselves verbally, as well as also kind of like physically too, of how can I allow myself to kind of not only rid this of my body or heal from this, but also like, how can I use this as transformative in my life?
Another thing that you said in your book, which I absolutely love, that speaks to that, is challenges gives us clarity, reveal our authentic identity and self-worth, and remind us what is inherently important in our lives. And I think everyone can relate to that, because it doesn't matter what the challenge is or what the tragedy is. I think everyone would fundamentally agree with that sentiment, that it is through these moments quite often that we are reminded, about the importance of life, the significance of purpose, who we really are, and whether or not we're going down a path that we intend to, or whether we need to redirect ourselves. I'm speaking with Nicole Spindler, author of Beyond Life's Moments, and we are talking about pushing yourself beyond the mindset of victimhood in the face of obstacles or tragedies. We will be back after these messages. You're listening to Let's Talk About It. Welcome back to Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Denise, and I'm talking today with Nicole Spindler, who's the author of Beyond Life's Moments. So before the break, we were talking about how we are able to really recognize who we are and what we're made of, right? Our resilience, our strengths, our capabilities, or incapabilities, and our limitations that we perceive ourselves that are often challenged in the face of obstacles or tragedies. I think this book is a really good idea because essentially you had your experience and you recognized how it affected you. And so you wanted to talk to other people who had been through something and find out what helped them to have the paradigm shift that you had. So tell us a little bit about the book and why you think it's a good read for someone.
Yeah, absolutely. So my book, Beyond Life's Moments, is I kind of categorize it as a, nonfiction memoir. I really want to just take you on a journey. That's really what I would do. I want to take you on a conversational journey. And I really, throughout my book, I dive into, I share my personal experience with my dad's cancer. But then I through this journey, I share these 8 pivotal lessons. I kind of refer to them as building blocks. And they're lessons that myself and my fellow heroes that I interviewed, that I've known personally and met through my book process, how we've been able to implement and learn these lessons and take them with us in future moments. And they include everything from vulnerability to gratitude to authenticity. And it really taking these lessons has really helped myself and my fellow heroes to recognize that really the true purpose of life, the gift of life, is to continuously grow beyond life's moments. And that has opened many doors for myself and my fellow stories tellers in my book. It has opened up doors for us professionally and personally. And I think one really big reason why I think this book can really impact a lot of people is because, I think we don't realize it. And I think it's something we glance at every day, but we truly, we live in a world that we benefit from each other's stories. We're surrounded by stories every day. And I think all our life stories are incredible. And I feel like we need to be definitely more comfortable with sharing each other's life stories. Because, regardless of whether you have climbed this mountain or just, crossed over a quick little small speed bump on the road, we've all faced different challenges and we can learn from one another. And I really want this book to be, to start a conversation. And I really want this book to help people recognize, what you're feeling, what you're going through in challenging chapters in your life, is real. It happens to all of us. You are not alone. And I really want also people to recognize that this challenge is not going to keep you buried at the bottom of the valley. This challenge is going to rise you up, and it's going to allow you to it could be the key that you've been waiting for. It could be the light at the end of the tunnel that you've been finally wanting to get towards. To allow you to pursue your dreams, allow you to get one step closer to your profession, maybe meet the person that you're meant to be with, like your soulmate. It can just lead to so many infinite opportunities, but all you have to do is just go beyond the moment. So I really want to communicate that lesson and message to my readers.
I think that's a beautiful lesson. And as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, how did you navigate the anger? Because I feel like when these things happen, when you have like a tragedy or an obstacle comes up, or even as you're navigating, there is a paymaster. Like anger is a paymaster that you have to go through in order to get beyond that life moment. And so, how did you get beyond that? What was the anger in which you experienced in your own situation, and how did you get past that?
I think, to be honest, what kind of kept me anchored and was kind of preventing me at several moments to kind of continuously move forward, I think was my own self-confidence.
Oh, wait, hold on. I said angry, and then you said anchored. Were you thinking?
Oh, angry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you. So I think my anchory, I think that was probably, that's a good question. I think it was just recognizing that, like, I was not alone. I think I had.
Hold on. I think it's my pronunciation, because I'm saying anger.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
But now I'm like, dang, I should ask that angry question.
Yeah, for literally, I was gonna say, I swear it sounds like I thought you said anchor. I was like, what's maybe angry?
No.
Okay, so
Like
what fueled my anger?
Like master. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think what fueled my anger, I think the most, and I really wasn't angry too much, to be honest. I think it was just more a lot of confusion that I faced. But where I felt anger was definitely just realizing that, it was just a pivotal moment where I realized I didn't have control. I didn't have control. And also I'm a type of person where I love to plan. I'm a planner. You should see my calendar. You should see my organization skills. It's through the roof. But it was like the first time in my life where I didn't have a plan. I had it was kind of like, I was following a map and, my path completely, it was blank. I had no idea where I was going. And it kind of was a wake up call. I was angry at first because I was like, I need to know what to do next. I need to know what the next step is. I need to know what the next minute, hour, day is going to be like, but I didn't. And that was definitely a good wake up call for me towards the beginning of it, because by kind of not having a true plan and by not knowing what the next minute was going to be like, or day or hour, I actually kind of felt at ease, and I felt kind of a little bit more like open to kind of embracing life. And it weirdly kind of allowed me just to kind of, open my eyes to kind of seeing around me, being a little more like visually aware of what was going on. But yeah, I would say that was probably the big thing, was recognizing that I didn't have a plan, and I had no control over it, and realizing that I really had to change my personality and change my, a skill that I had for so long, and recognize that, some moments, like, you can't plan. You don't know what the future is going to be like. You're not going to be able to, create a to-do list every day. You just kind of have to take it moment by moment and just go with the flow and see how it is. And that really has served me well, for the last several years.
Okay. What do you think, after someone reads your book, what is the one thing that you want them to walk away knowing?
I want them to walk away knowing that, your story, your life story is truly unique, and recognize that, whether you realize it or not, what you've gone through in life can have an impact on someone. It can, and it will. And, and I think, whether it's a family member or a friend or even a stranger you just happen to talk to one day on the street, I think your experiences can truly impact someone. And also, to be honest, so like recognize that, you got to tell your story. Your story will help someone and touch someone's life. But also recognize that sometimes you need to also hear your own story too. And you need to, in order for you to internalize, wow, like I've been through a lot of stuff. I've gone through a lot, but here I am. Here I am on the top of the mountain. Yeah, I got a lot more to climb, but like, here I am. And recognize that you've gone so far and you've got a lifetime ahead of many more wonderful things, but also challenging things ahead. It allows you to kind of celebrate yourself. So I challenge my readers, once they read my book, to be able to at least take their story and hopefully help someone, but also allow them to help themselves as well. And allow them to kind of recognize, hey, like life is hard, but I'm doing pretty good. So
not too shabby, not too bad. I think, it is a real tragedy when there is a tragedy or when there is an obstacle and you are unable to move beyond life's moments. Because what is the alternative if you don't move? Then you're trapped, within that moment. And there's so many people that's trapped within moments, whether it's a loss or a tragedy. There's some people that's trapped in moments, like their high school was like the pivotal like success of their lives. And they're like, 55 years old, and it's pretty much about making it to the, state tournament or something, right? So it's okay to enjoy life's moments and to really allow yourself to process and feel things as you're going through them. But like you say, life is beyond the moments. So I think that's one of the lessons that people will get when they read your book, is that no matter what the moment is, that there is life beyond this moment, right? The best thing that could happen, the worst thing that could happen. And we have to find ways to adjust our mindset from the rabbit hole and kind of redirect some of that energy into the overcoming of the obstacle and the healing within ourselves. So I think people will get that from your book. Well, it's been really awesome having this conversation with you today. I think your book is a book where people can read just to get inspiration and recognize that, hey, stuff happens in life and look how these people handle it. And this is the mindset that they use to kind of navigate their way through it. So I want to thank you for stopping by and sharing your book with us and sharing your experience and some of your perspective. And I hope as you move through life's moments, you continue to creatively share your experience and your perspective and help to inspire others as they navigate beyond life's moments.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you so much. That means so much. That means a great deal to me. And I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. It's been lovely.
Likewise. Well, guys, we are at the end of another episode of Let's Talk About It. I'm your host, Denise. As I usually say, please take care of yourself and each other. See you next time. Bye.
You've been listening to the podcast, Let's Talk About It. Feel free to support our podcast by selecting the sponsorship link on this platform. Drop us a line or even be one of our guests. Visit us on the web at www.imdenise.com to learn more.